Welcome to Troutbitten, Riverside. Let's talk about fly rods. Everybody's favorite topic, right? Fly rods, flies. I'm kind of a leader's guy. So let's talk about the best options or the things I'd really like to look for when I'm choosing a fly rod for fishing the mono rig. So I fish in a bunch of different ways with a fly rod. The reason I fish a fly rod is because I can meet the trout on their own terms. If they're eating streamers, if they're eating nymphs, wet flies, dry flies on top, I can do all of that with a fly rod. So I fish dry flies every chance the trout give me. If I see rising trout, I'm going to get them with a fly line and with usually a Harvey dry leader. But for most of my underwater presentations, I fish what I call a standard mono rig, and that gives me a lot of advantages. When I say standard, I'm talking about the Troutbitten standard mono rig. It's a hybrid system. It's built for fly line style casting. These days, the butt section of that leader may actually be thought of as a little thick. But that thickness gives me the power to really punch things around, push things around, a lot like a fly line. And the point is that all of this mono rig stuff has really become popular because it's a lot of fun. You start to realize how much control you have over the system. You can do everything you want to do with those flies, really at any moment. You know where the flies are. There's no guessing when it comes to nymphing or fishing streamers or dry dropper. You know where everything is, and you get to decide where it's going next. And so the fly fishing companies, have kind of responded to all this by building specialized rods. But you have to realize, those are very much made to do specialized things. And there's just, I'll say generally, a lot of confusion around what might be a good fly rod for the job. And maybe what that job is, too. So there's no doubt the question I field the most is about fly rods. And I'll tell you now, you do not need to go buy a new fly rod to use the mono rig, to do tight line styles or Euro-Nymphing. You sincerely do not need a new fly rod. But I'll get to all of that. I mean, there's some things about the rod that can really help you to kind of expand your horizons and what you can do with the mono rig. So I'd like to share with you a chapter from my upcoming book, Fly Fishing the Mono Rig. And this is really an adaptation from an article that I wrote a couple years ago. I've updated that article a couple times now. It's on the Troutbitten website. And a lot of what I'm going to read here is from that article. And then it made its way to the chapter that's in the book in a similar but different format. I'll say too, I'm not going to tell you about all my favorite rods specifically right here. All of that is going to be updated in the description below as time goes on and on the Troutbitten website as time goes on, because, well, my favorite rods right now aren't going to be in production probably in even like 2 or 3 years. So those kinds of things change. And so those preferences will change. For so many years, I fished like a Sage Z-axis, 9-foot 6-inch 4-weight. I fished it for like 5 or 6 years, especially when I really got into the mono rig tight line style. And I didn't need anything else. But then when I kind of got into the industry, the main question you always get is, what's your favorite fly rod? And I could tell people it's my Sage Z-axis, but you couldn't buy it. And truth be told too, that as time goes on, a lot of improvements in the fly rod are real. I mean, there's some really nice, there's a crispness to the action. Things get dialed in. And so my preferences have changed, and I have nicer stuff in my hands than I ever have had before. So I get to, have my hands on a lot of gear. I know what works. I know what I like, and I guide enough to understand really where a lot of confusions are with people, and I kind of know what holds people back and really helps them out too. So I encourage you really to go check out the article on the Troutbitten website. You'll find all of this that I'm going to read and really a lot more, because I'm not going to read the whole thing. Let me share a lot of this with you. Let me first say thank you to Skwala for supporting the Troutbitten project. I've been working with Kevin and Rich from the beginning, like 3 years ago now. And Skwala just builds stuff. You could tell it's built by anglers. It's built for anglers who really fish hard. It's not gear that's going to fall apart in a couple days. It's kind of bomb-proof stuff that's there for you day after day. It's comfortable to wear. I really love all the Skwala stuff. Skwala's coming out with boots real soon, April of 2025 here. And I've been wearing the prototypes of those boots. They're fantastic. Like a lot of the Skwala stuff, it's light, moves with you, but the support is there too, especially in the boot. I'm kind of a baby about my feet. And the Skwala boots are supportive, let's say, in the right ways. You can use the code Troutbitten10 for 10% off your first order over at skwalafishing.com. Thanks again to the guys over at Skwala. So here's the chapter, Choosing the Best Fly Rod, from the upcoming book, Fly Fishing the Mono Rig, and that article I spoke of over at the Troutbitten website. The inherent complexity of the mono rig is a key point to understand. This isn't just Euro-Nymphing. It isn't high sticking or check nymphing. It's not chuck and duck. It's not about fishing heavyweight or always fishing light. The tight line advantage with a mono rig opens the possibilities for perfectly controlled presentations over every style in a wide variety of methods, and missing any of that is selling yourself short. So to get the most of what's available, we need the right tool for the job, the right fly rod. And I said that I fish a mono rig for almost all of my underwater presentations these days because of that contact, because of the control. My dog just sneezed. Now, you already hear me talking about getting the most of what's available, and this goes back to being versatile. And you're going to hear this theme a lot through what I'll read. Versatility to me is a really big deal. Versatility to you might not be a really big deal. I care a lot about just switching over to a dry fly leader and fishing dry flies. I care a lot about fishing streamers almost every day I'm on the water. I care a lot about attaching an indicator and doing all these different things. But I'll be honest, for 5 years, I almost just tight-lined nymphs with either split shot or weighted flies at a short range, and I did almost nothing else. And I'd even pick the water type that really suited that tactic. Short range, pretty heavy system, pretty heavy flies, I should say. I did it for 5 years. So I didn't care about versatility back then, but I do now. So all of these things we're going to talk about with what a fly rod can do and how it specifically applies to fly fishing a mono rig. These qualities are going to matter differently depending on what your goals are. Let's keep going. With such a wide variety in presentation styles, there's sure to be multiple fly rod builds that suit the angler. There's you. Because things have changed so fast in the industry, there's a lot of confusion about what fly rod to choose for the mono rig and tightline styles. There's more conflicting information than there is a solid understanding. That's fair. The most common assumption is to pick up the latest Euro rod, but that can be a mistake that limits anglers and leads them down a narrow path with some restrictions. Specialization, I think, should come later, with your eyes wide open and with intention. That's when a Euro-Nymphing specific fly rod might make sense. You can fish a mono rig on any fly rod. You don't need to buy a new one. I said that earlier. And you really should fish with what you have already. What you already have in your car, in your garage, in your office. Fish it already, just to prove it to yourself that it can be done. And you might also prove it to yourself that you don't need a new fly rod. Save a little money. But having a tool matched for the goals does make a lot of sense. Talking about your goals a second ago. Luckily, fly rods well suited for getting the most out of a mono rig are often the same fly rods that fish dry flies and floating lines very well. That's because casting matters most. And if you've watched any of the Troutbitten videos, if you've read much, if you listen to the podcast, you understand it. I'm really big on that. I think to get the most out of a fly casting system, fly line or a mono rig, we need that fly casting style. Regardless of the leader build, whether it's standard build, thin or micro thin, and I use all of them, regardless, I am always using a fly line casting style, meaning the cast happens up in the air and I'm getting full turnover. That's the difference. That's what makes it fly casting. We'll get into that in a minute. We'll get into that right now. Fishing a mono rig with skill requires excellent fly line casting. The stroke is the same. It's 10 and 2, with acceleration between 2 points and crisp stops. The rod loads and unloads, and full turnover finishes in the air, not on the water. We're not slinging, lobbing, or water hauling, except in unusual circumstances. I'm not saying I'll never water haul. But for me, it's unusual. Because great casting unlocks all the available options and the presentations with a mono rig. But the right fly rod and leader is kind of required. This is where it all begins. And I mean it. It's that real casting that I think kind of identifies this style. And again, I'm not casting that way for any aesthetic. I don't care. I have no pretense about fly fishing. I don't. care about, this is fly fishing. No, I cast that way with a fly line casting style with a mono rig because of the presentation options. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The fly fishing industry has become entrenched in a specialized style of rods marketed for tight line anglers, Euro rods. Some of these rods are fine tools, but many are specialized to the point where they just do one thing really well. If you want to do that one thing and only that one thing, they're a great choice. And as you'll hear in the following text, I think that's a big mistake though sometimes, right? I really do think that specialization can hold you back. So I'm a wade angler who carries one fly rod. I leave the truck and I don't come back until the end of the day. I walk through brush and I cast under tree limbs. I fish in the real world. It's a river, not a golf course. I don't have a bag of fly rods with me. I don't have a cart parked on a nearby path. I don't have a caddy. And I enjoy being ready for anything, meeting trout on their own terms. That kind of versatility is one of the pure joys of fly fishing. Doing one thing for very long is kind of boring and unproductive oftentimes anyway. So the best anglers are flexible and nimble on the water, ready to change. This is the inherent challenge of fishing, any fishing. And we're thankful that so many things change on a river so often. And I just want to be able to adapt to it. So I'll tell you here about my favorite rods, about the qualities of my favorite rods, the tools I use every day, and the ones that I have confidence in. These are the kind of rods that are well matched to the mono rig. And I really do mean getting the most out of the mono rig, right? Everything you can do with this system, streamers, nymphs, 2 or 3 different ways, under an indicator, drop shot, split shot, Euro-Nymphing, which is a tight line system with nothing attached to the leader but the flies themselves. I do that probably 1/3 of the time, right? Streamers, I think I already said that. And then I'll do tight line dry dropper, and I'll even fish single dries occasionally. All of that can be done on a mono rig. It's not just one thing we're trying to do. Not for me. So here's what matters in a fly rod. Now think about this. I guess we're finally getting to the meat of this whole presentation and really this whole chapter. Fly rods are long, bendy sticks with a reel seat, with line guides and a cork handle. The fly rod is a simple tool. And aside from the cosmetics and appointments, there aren't many selling points on performance to focus on. It's a stick. So we hear the same things with every new model of fly rod. This one's more accurate and it's more sensitive. It's lighter too, right? That's usually what you hear. Look around. Those are your selling points. Let's add in power and blend it together with how that rod flexes. And now you have a good set of factors for making a decision on the best rods for fly fishing the mono rig, or really for fly fishing however you're doing it, right? Those are your qualities in the fly rod, but let's understand them. Let me briefly address these qualities to understand how all of them really are connected. Accuracy is our first one. Every angler wants more accuracy. Even when you can hit the same corner pocket 6 times in a row, you wish for 7. That doesn't change. Everybody wants to be more accurate. Nothing's more important than that accuracy. That precise placement of where the fly lands and where the attached tippet lands. Never forget that. Accuracy in fly casting contains a second component, where the tippet lands, where the leader lands. We want a target for the fly and a target for the tippet in the leader. We need accuracy then for both. And that's fly fishing. That ability to really put the tippet in the leader where you choose. I mean, you could kick it around this way. A fly could land, you could really kick the leader around into a different position. You can tuck it in, arc it down in, push it. That's really what defines fly fishing. Well, that's really one of the things that gives you a major advantage with fly fishing. And I don't want to lose that ability, right? In my leader builds or in my fly rod. I want that to be my choice, how I get that, what I'm calling a second target. So faster rods are more accurate. The less a rod flexes, the more precision we have for our target. Flex is needed, of course, but extra flex makes the course of the fly less predictable. On the back cast, as the fly rod bends, our brain kind of processes the feeling of that flex back there. And how much and in what direction is the rod tip bending. We know all of that because we can feel it. And where will that flex send the fly on the forward stroke? We know all of this when we feel it back there, when it flexes. But extra flexibility can make that answer, those answers in our brain, less predictable. That's just true. So specific to a tight line mono-rig system, flex happens without the weight of a fly line. Here, understand this. So we're often told that we need a flexi rod tip, one that loads easier with light flies and light leaders, if you're going to be using a mono-rig. This is mostly false. It is. Or more to the point, it's a bad way to decide on an appropriate fly rod. You don't need it. You don't need that extra flex. Here's what I mean. Loading the rod tip is up to the angler. It's up to you. It's up to me. It's not up to the leader. It's not up to the fly that has weight in it, that tungsten bead, and it's not up to split shot. Think about this. With a great casting stroke, every fly rod loads with nothing strung through the guides. Think about it. Try this yourself. Pick up a bare fly rod and cast it. Cast it. There's nothing, no line, no leader, no fly, nothing attached. Just a bare fly rod and go here and here. So the rod flexes and unflexes at those crisp stops without the weight of split shot or tungsten beads, without the weight of the fly line or the leader. You can do that with any fly rod. Pick it up. Boom, boom, it flexes. So it's up to us to flex the rod. That's the way I look at casting. There's no need to rely on the line, the leader, or the fly to do this for us. Now, I understand that's kind of a different concept. It's just the way I think of it. And I guess I've built my casting style around it, unintentionally, but that's the way I cast, here and here. It's a very short, compact stroke that gets the most out of the fly rod. I don't cast with my arm. I cast with the rod. You spend a lot of money on the rods, flex them, and it's up to you to flex it. It's not up to the weight. So choosing a fly rod with excessive flex leads the angler down an odd path, making strange adjustments to the casting stroke because the rod isn't built for what I'd call real casting. The next quality to think about is sensitivity. This is the other key selling point for most fly rods. Everyone loves a sensitive tool. And through my decades on the water, this is the biggest change that I've seen in my favorite rods. There's no doubt each generation of graphite technology somehow transmits more feel from the end of the fly line all the way up to the casting hand. And here's the most important thing to understand. Faster rods are more sensitive. Somehow in the garbled lexicon of selling points and Instagram ads, this one's gotten turned around. Many anglers tell me they have chosen a soft, flexible tip for better sensitivity, but that's simply the wrong information. However, there are two types of rod sensitivity. Let's understand why I'm saying it's the wrong information. You have two types. There's feel during the drift, and then there's feel during the cast. Break it down. The former is about feeling the transmission of a nymph ticking the bottom or the subtle take of a trout. That kind of feel. And this drift sensitivity is better with less flex, with a faster fly rod. That is a fact. There's no doubt about it. You can look across the fishing landscape for confirmation of this principle. Faster, stiffer rod tips transmit vibrations better, while flexible tips kind of act as dampeners. So sensitivity during the cast is the opposite. It's the other kind of sensitivity. We feel the fly rod load more with the flexible fly rod. Fiberglass and bamboo guys love this kind of sensitivity, but neither is a good choice for a mono-rig fly rod. It's really not. It's too flexible. So that ability to feel what the rod is doing is heightened by the rod flexing more. That kind of sensitivity, right? It's more sensitive then during the cast. But remember the consequences of a more flexible tip too. That extra flex makes the fly rod, essentially makes it less accurate. So let me clarify. I'm saying that obviously some flex is needed. You're not going to cast a 2x4 and be very accurate. Some flex is needed. That's the rod's job. But I'm saying extra flexibility, which is built into a lot of specialized rods, will hold you back. It'll take some of your accuracy away. And it does not make the rod tip more sensitive, let's say, to fish takes and even the riverbed, or even kind of feeling the load of the currents on the rod tip. That kind of sensitivity is better with a fast rod. So another quality in a fly rod to really consider is rod recovery. This is what most often separates a decent rod from a great one. This is really what you pay for. So after a fly rod flexes, the cast completes and the nymph or streamer enters the water. And on a tight line system, we want perfect control of what's above the water. That's what sets up a great drift. We need a stable sighter then. That sighter, we don't want it want too much of this or any of this sometimes. We just want it to be very stable. And that's only possible with a rod that recovers quickly and stops wiggling and waving immediately after the cast finishes. Longer, slower, more flexible rods recover more slowly. Shorter, faster, and more powerful rods recover more quickly. Also, the best streamer animations happen with the rod tip. And so fast rod tip recovery is extremely important while fishing streamers. That's a big deal to me when I'm choosing a fly rod. My favorite fly rods all recover very quickly. Here's what I mean by that recovery. I mean, after the cast, the rod flexes and unflexes, and then you just want it to go boom, 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 and it's done flexing, it's done waving, right? If it goes boom, 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 that's too long, and it makes your sighter do all of that. That doesn't matter so much. It really doesn't matter so much when you have a fly line in between you and the flies. That fly line will kind of stabilize things. That's a fact. It's so you kind of have a unique quality that we need as a tightline angler when you're fishing a mono rig. So let's talk about rod length. Good fly fishing for river trout usually happens within 30 feet of where you're standing. I don't care how you're fishing, whether it's streamers, dry flies. I'd rather be within 30 feet. So fly fishing itself is a short range game. And the tightline game, though, is even shorter. If we really wanted distance presentations, we'd use a gear rod. I would. When I fish saltwater, when I'm just standing right there in the surf and the waves are crashing in the Atlantic Ocean in front of me, I fish a gear rod because it's the best tool for the job. I'm not saying I wouldn't fish a fly rod, but I'm saying if I want distance and it's windy and all that other stuff, I'm fishing a gear rod. So fly fishing comes with these inherent limitations that also can provide many benefits. We are more accurate at short range. I mean, by having a short range system, that's what I'm saying, you're almost forced into doing good things. More accuracy because you're closer. We see into the water better at short range. That's a big deal. I'd love to be able to see into the water. I'm always positioning myself, with the glare, so I can see through it. I don't want to be looking into the glare, right? I'll choose to fish this way instead of that way because I can see into the water. And when you can see into the water, you can read the riverbed, and you're going to drift the nymphs or the streamer, whatever you're doing. You're going to fish it better. Hook sets are also more effective, and we have better control over the fight at short range. So the best tightline anglers are good waders, committed to staying in range. It's an archery hunter's approach, not that of a long-range rifleman. The tightline advantage falls apart when we push it out of its natural range, 20 to 30 feet. That's about it. And anything more comes with compromises to the system. You're going to fish a little bit further sometimes and closer, but those compromises are there. You're not within the baseline. You're not within the fundamentals. You're not within what the system does the best. A long rod, therefore, helps maximize the tightline advantage of keeping everything up and out of the water that doesn't have to be in or on the water. 10 feet is a great rod length. 8 feet is very short. And 11 feet is too long to be versatile, for me. So a rod between 9 and 10 feet makes the best choice for a fly rod that maximizes the possibilities of a monorig system, all those possibilities. Remember that rods of more length take longer to recover, regardless of how expensive they are. For me, the trade-offs then, when going to 11 feet, simply aren't worth it. The rod takes too long to recover. The rod flexes too much, especially for streamers. I fish streamers a lot, and I just want to be able to go nymph, streamers, back and forth. And most of my favorite streamer animations happen with the rod tip. The rod tip flexes too much, and then that doesn't want to recover. So if I go jerk, strip, it hasn't recovered yet, and I want to do the next motion. 11 feet's just too long for a streamer rod, but it's a specialized rod, and it is really good at fishing light nymphs a long way away, right? Really pushing that 30, maybe 35 feet. That's really far. But if you're tall, you got long arms, that'll work, right? It's a specialized rod, 11 feet. And so if that's what you love to do, and if that's your goal, if you love doing that one thing, that might be your rod. 11 feet might be a good choice for you. Just know what the limitations are, right? It's not versatile. It's very specialized. And if you can carry multiple rods on the water, and if that's, how things set up for you, then you could have multiple specialized rods. It's not my thing. I like to have one tool in my hand almost every day I fish with the same rod. I get very, very, well, used to how it is, and I like to think I can cast it well, right? I can approach most moments, at least have a ton of confidence that I'm going to be accurate, no matter what fly is on the end of the rod, because I've fished it every day so often. Let's talk about another quality in fly rods that people talk about when they're thinking about buying a new rod, or this rod's better than another for the monorig stuff. So Tippet Protection is another talking point that leads many anglers toward choosing a fly rod that might not be up to the task. Don't buy a fly rod because it promises to protect light tippets. That's my message. Every decent fly rod has enough tippet protection during both the hook set and the fight. If you're breaking off on the hook set, don't blame the fly rod. Change the way you're setting the hook. If you're breaking off during the fight, change the way you're fighting the fish. Rely on the drag of the reel instead of a flexible rod tip to protect those light tippets. Again, all decent rods have enough tippet protection. Why would tightline anglers need this any more than a dry fly angler who's fishing number 24 Trico spinners on 7X nylon? They don't. Tightline anglers don't need it any more than the dry fly angler. Fly rods, then, have been built to protect light tippets from the beginning. And almost every decent rod is going to do that, if you treat it the right way. So I really think that this talking point has gotten out of hand. I think the tippet protection is a little too much, right? The soft tips that are built into some specialized rods so that they'll protect light tippets, you don't need that. And that soft tip comes with compromises. And I mean it, all the way down to 8X. I mean it. Now, I'm not going to fish a fast 6-weight with, 8X. So if you take it to extremes, then my argument's going to fail, right? But in that 2, 3, 4, even 5-weight rod range, almost every decent rod built for any style is going to have that tippet protection. Enough of it. If you do the things I was talking about, fight them right, use the drag if you need it. So power equals versatility. That I talk a lot about power. So what's the best fly rod for a monorig for tightline styles and Euro-Nymphing? One quality matters most. It's power. River trout live in an ever-changing environment. What they eat, where they find that food, and how they capture it changes just as often. So from my earliest days of trout fishing as a kid, adapting to the trout and being a versatile angler were paramount. And it's only become more important over the years. So limitations don't stand out until they're staring you in the face. And that's especially true with a monorig. Powerful fly rods allow the angler to do anything with a monorig, while underpowered fly rods, extra long fly rods, and extra flexible fly rods kind of restrict an angler's options and box them into a small, specialized set of tactics. 11-foot rods are terrible for streamer presentations, like I said, because the best streamer tactics do happen by moving the fly rod with the rod tip, in my opinion. Also, when that rod tip is 9 feet away, then you're in a lot more control of it than when it's 11 feet away. Think about that. You're 2 feet further away from where the contact point is with that fly. Finally, long rods never recover fast enough to be a good streamer rod. We talked about this, right? Likewise, underpowered rods don't handle indicator tactics very well. Not well at all. But adding a small piece of yarn as an indicator on the monorig creates a deadly tool that solves problems at distance. I use it a lot. I probably throw some kind of suspender on there, whether that's a dry fly, yarn, or a small bobber, 40% of the time when I'm nymphing. That Indy, that suspender, provides a balanced, even ride and opens up a whole new range of presentations. But the yarn, if you choose yarn, kind of adds air resistance too. And a fly rod needs power to push through that resistance of the yarn, that air resistance, push through it in the cast. Similarly, if a bobber or another hard indicator is used for the Indy, the extra weight of the cork, the plastic, or the foam flexes the rod more on the back cast, right? That weight pulls back there. It's not that a longer rod, more flexible rod can't handle it. Like you're not going to damage the rod, but the extra flex takes forever to complete back there. The rod loses power because it flexes so much, and the whole system kind of falls apart into an ineffective experience that's not much fun at the end of the line. Dry dropper tactics on a monorig are also more challenging with an underpowered rod. And a powerful rod can push through that extra air resistance of a variety of dry fly sizes and types. But a soft rod struggles to do the same, forcing the angler into like to kind of overweight the nymph and then rely on the weight to pull the system to target rather than using the power and speed to push it around. Even the fundamental skill on a monorig, which is pure tightline nymphing, is improved with a powerful fly rod because power opens up the possibilities of a tuck cast. Now always remember that fly fishing is unique because we choose both where the fly lands and how the line lands. We talked about that second target. This isn't possible with any other fishing method. So our ability to manipulate how the tippet enters and in what position the sighter lands above the water in the air, begins with a great tuck cast. It's a fly first entry, and then what choice are you going to make with the tippet in that tuck cast? Like, how are you going to land that tippet? Where, how, what angles? Steep or shallow? With pure contact or a bit of grace to the fly to allow it to fall? How will you land and position the tippet? Those are the questions. Mastery of the tuck cast is a next level skill that I see anglers miss more than anything else. And sadly, they're sometimes told that it doesn't matter. But why surrender the fundamental advantage of fly fishing over gear fishing? Our ability to choose the target, the position of that tippet and the leader after the fly lands comes only with a tuck cast, a fly first entry. It's as simple as achieving full turnover in the air. The fly hits the water first, and the options for the tippet then are wide open. Put it where you want it. And longer, softer, extra flexible rods are a poor choice for tuck casting. I've grabbed many Euro rods to demonstrate a good tuck cast and been stunned by how little casting speed these rods could handle before falling apart into a whippy mess. Seriously, if there's one thing you can do to improve your tightline game, your nymphing game, your tightline nymphing game, learn the tuck cast. Really learn the tuck cast. Not just the fly first entry, but then how much do you want to manipulate that curve with that arc? What kind of arc? How much power? And there's that word power again. My go-to rod for many years was a Sage Z-Axis 9-foot 6-inch 4-weight. When the industry fell in love with the Euro-Nymphing term, a certain company was one of the first to release a specialized fly rod supposedly built for these tactics. So I bought a 3-weight of this rod, and it was a disaster. I returned the rod in short order because it was a soft stick built to flex under the light loads of just the fly and the leader. And as I stated above, that's not only unnecessary, it comes with major consequences that are inherent when you sacrifice power. A dramatic change in my casting stroke was required to adapt to that rod. I had to limit my speed and power to match the rod. And I had to wait for the rod to load far too long. Worse yet, that specialized rod had no backbone. I'll never forget my second day hooking 2 mid-teens brown trout on, back-to-back casts in rough water. Downstream of my position, the rod flexed into the cork, and it made a chore out of fighting mid-sized fish. They were good mid-sized fish. They were really big mid-sized fish. Side pressure and low rod angle mattered very little. The rod simply couldn't handle the job. And then add in rod guides that flattened under little pressure, combined with an overall dead feel, and my first experience with a fly rod that was built for the job left a very bad taste in my mouth. But these days, what I'll call specialized Euro rods are much better tools. The best ones are built with flexible tips, but more stout mid and butt sections. Some will say the tip of a 2-weight, the mid section of a 4-weight, and the butt section of a 5-weight. That's a good combination. These are really good rods, and I have my favorites, but that light, flexible tip still does come with all the compromises made when we sacrifice power. So you can land the biggest fish of your life on an 11-foot 2-weight. Understand that, especially with these modern rod designs. So when I'm talking about sacrificing power, I'm no longer talking about fighting fish. These modern, let's say, Euro-Nymphing rods, specialized rods, can handle it. Don't buy a 4 or 5 weight so you can land the big ones. You don't need it. Fight the fish the right way. These modern rods have enough backbone. Most of them, the good ones, right? So specialization in that way, it's good. So these are the qualities of a fly rod that matter the most when fishing a mono rig. We covered accuracy, sensitivity, both types of sensitivity, rod recovery, rod length, and power. First, think about how versatile you want to be on the water. Does it matter to you, right? Then think about your casting style and what you really want to do day to day out there. Then you can factor all of these qualities that matter and choose your next fly rod, or fish the one you already have. Really, like I said, you should do that first. And do it for a while. Give yourself a chance with that rod you already have. So I'm not listing my favorite rods in this video, but I'll include them in the description below. Like I said, I'll update it as the years go by. Now, I have my favorite do-it-all daily rods. I use that way more than anything else. But I also have my favorite just like pure tight line nymphing, especially with light leaders and light flies. It's a 3-weight. And my favorites then for fishing streamers on a mono rig, and that's usually a 5-weight, a stiff 4 or a 5. And I'll keep all of these updated as the seasons pass. So remember, way more important than the fly rod, than the leader, the flies themselves, is how you're presenting those flies. And perfecting those presentations is really where the fun of all of this really begins anyway. So fish hard, friends. Have fun out there.